The Zorgan expedition fleet glided silently through the void, sleek silver ships propelled by advanced zero-point drives. On the bridge of the flagship, Commander Khazir stared intently at the holographic star map, his 4 eyes scanning the unfamiliar constellations. "Commander, we're picking up some unusual readings from the third planet of the target system," reported his sensor officer, Laraza. "It appears to be a technological civilization, but the energy signatures are like nothing we've ever seen." Khazir's antennae twitched with surprise and anticipation. The Zorgans had explored dozens of star systems, but had never encountered another spacefaring species. He ordered the fleet to approach cautiously. As they entered orbit around the blue-green world, their sensors were suddenly bombarded with a barrage of signals, radio waves, tight beam transmissions, and what appeared to be some form of quantum entanglement communication. The Zorgans were stunned. This level of technology was far beyond what their models had predicted for a young civilization. Khazir composed a message of peace and broadcast it on all frequencies. "Greetings, people of Earth. We are the Zorgans, explorers from beyond your star. We come in friendship, seeking to exchange knowledge and culture." There was a tense silence. Then, to the Zorgans' shock, a reply came, not in words, but in images and mathematical equations that displayed a grasp of physics and cosmology rivaling their own. The humans welcomed the Zorgans and invited them to send a delegation to the surface. As the shuttle descended through the atmosphere, Khazir marveled at the sight of gleaming cities, sprawling industrial complexes, and what appeared to be spacecraft launching from the surface. But something wasn't quite right. The designs were unfamiliar, even alien to Zorgan engineering philosophy. There was a certain brutalist aesthetic, a ruggedness that prioritized function over form. The shuttle touched down on a landing pad outside a massive, fortified structure. Khazir and his team were greeted by a delegation of humans, tall, bipedal creatures with varied skin tones and facial features. Their leader, a gray-haired male in a crisp uniform, stepped forward. "Welcome to Earth, Commander Khazir. I am Admiral Stanislav Petrov of the United Earth Space Command. We are honored to be the first to make contact with an extraterrestrial civilization." As the two groups exchanged formal pleasantries, Khazir couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. He had noticed the subtle bulges of concealed weapons under the humans' uniforms, the coiled tension in their stances. For a supposedly peaceful species, they seemed unusually prepared for violence. The Admiral must have noticed Khazir's apprehension. He smiled disarmingly. You must forgive our precautions, Commander. Our history has taught us to be cautious in the face of the unknown. We have fought hard to achieve unity and peace on our world. Now, shall we begin our discussions?" Khazir nodded, pushing his concerns aside. This was a momentous occasion, the beginning of a new era of interstellar cooperation. Surely any misunderstandings could be resolved through diplomacy and goodwill. But as he followed the humans into their command center, he couldn't help but wonder if the Zorgans were truly prepared for what they might find in this deceptively advanced civilization. The humans had already proven themselves full of surprises, and Khazir suspected that many more lay ahead. Little did he know just how prophetic those thoughts would prove to be. The story of human-Zorgan relations was only just beginning, and it would be filled with marvels, shocks, and conflicts beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. The age of humanity had begun. Khazir and his team had spent weeks on Earth, touring human facilities and engaging in cultural exchange. While impressed by human ingenuity and drive, he couldn't shake a sense of foreboding. Human technology seemed geared towards conflict, their ships and weapons designed for raw power over elegance. Seeking to understand this contradiction, Khazir requested permission to visit Epsilon Prime, a newly established human colony on the frontier. The humans agreed, and a small Zorgan research vessel soon arrived in the Epsilon system. As they approached the colony, Laraza once again reported anomalous readings. "Commander, I'm detecting multiple ships in orbit, but they don't match human signatures. They appear to be armed and are moving to intercept us." Before Khazir could react, A barrage of missile fire struck the research vessel, sending it tumbling out of control. Emergency force fields barely held as the ship plummeted towards the planet's surface. Through the viewports, Khazir caught glimpses of a fierce space battle erupting above. A ragtag fleet of mismatched ships swarmed the colony like locusts, pounding its defenses with relentless bombardment. Pirates, he realized with dread. The research vessel crashed in a valley outside the colony's main settlement. Khazir and his team emerged from the wreckage, battered but alive thanks to their ship's advanced safety systems. In the distance, they could see the pirates' ground forces advancing, columns of smoke rising from the beleaguered colony. Suddenly, a tremendous roar shook the ground. Khazir looked up to see a human frigate, flames billowing from damage along its hull, hurtling directly towards the pirate fleet. With mounting horror, he realized it was on a collision course. Just before impact, the frigate disappeared in a blinding flash of light. A massive shockwave knocked Khazir off his feet, and when his vision cleared, he saw an expanding cloud of debris where the pirate ships had been. Stunned, Khazir and his team could only watch as the remaining pirate ground forces broke and ran, fleeing back to their landing craft. Human defenders poured out of the colony, mopping up the survivors with ruthless efficiency. In the aftermath, Khazir sought out the human commander, a grizzled veteran named Captain Olivia Dant. "Your frigate. It sacrificed itself to take out the pirates. How could you make such a decision?" Dant fixed him with a steely gaze. "Those pirates would have slaughtered everyone in the colony and taken the rest as slaves. One ship to save thousands. It was a price we were willing to pay." Khazir shook his head in disbelief. "But the loss of life, the sheer destruction. Sometimes, Commander, that's what it takes to protect what matters. We humans learned that lesson the hard way through centuries of war and strife. Now, we do what we must to defend our own." As the Zorgans departed Epsilon Prime, Khazir couldn't shake the image of the human frigate's final desperate charge. It went against everything the Zorgans believed about the sanctity of life and the pursuit of peaceful resolution. Yet, he couldn't deny the results. The human willingness to go to extremes, to sacrifice everything for the greater good, had saved an entire colony. It was a sobering realization, one that hinted at the true depth of human resolve. Back on his ship, Khazir pored over the data from the incident, seeking to understand this new facet of humanity. One thing became crystal clear. The humans were not a species to be underestimated. Their capacity for destruction was matched only by their determination to protect their own. It was a volatile combination, one that could reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. As he prepared his report for the Zorgan High Council, Khazir knew that the Epsilon incident was only the beginning. The humans had shown their hand, and the universe would never be the same. In the wake of the Epsilon incident, tensions between humans and the expansionist Kroll Empire had reached a boiling point. The Kroll, a warlike species with a long history of conquest, saw humanity's rapid rise as a threat to their dominance. Seeking to forge an alliance against the Kroll, human diplomats invited the Zorgans to a summit on the neutral planet of Galagos II. Khazir, now a respected expert on human affairs, was chosen to represent his people. As the talks proceeded, Khazir couldn't help but notice the palpable tension in the room. The human delegation, led by the formidable ambassador Natasha Ivanova, argued passionately for a united front against Kroll aggression. The Zorgans, ever cautious, were hesitant to commit to a military pact. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the compound. Khazir rushed to a window just in time to see a swarm of Kroll drop ships descending through the clouds, disgorging hordes of heavily armed troops. Ambassador Ivanova reacted instantly. "They've launched a surprise attack to decapitate the alliance before it can form. We need to evacuate immediately." As the delegates rushed to their ships, the human security forces moved to engage the Kroll. Outnumbered and outgunned, they fought with a ferocity that stunned Khazir. He watched in awe as human soldiers took down Kroll warriors twice their size, using tactical cunning and sheer grit to hold the line. In the chaos, Khazir found himself cut off from his ship, pinned down by a Kroll fire team. Just as he prepared to make a desperate charge, a human dropship roared overhead, disgorging a platoon of power-armored Marines. They hit the Kroll like a thunderbolt, their advanced weapons cutting through the enemy ranks like a scythe. Leading the charge was Sergeant Tomas Ramirez, a battle-scarred veteran with a bionic arm. He pulled Khazir to safety, grinning fiercely. "Stick with us, Commander. We'll get you out of here." Together, the humans and Zorgans fought their way to the landing zone. As they lifted off, Khazir looked back to see the Marines still engaged in a fierce rearguard action, buying time for the delegates to escape. Just when it seemed the Kroll would overwhelm the humans, a massive shape eclipsed the sun. A human battleship, the UES Indomitable, had arrived in orbit, its guns blazing as it tore into the Kroll fleet. The tide turned in an instant. Faced with the Indomitable's overwhelming firepower, the Kroll broke ranks and fled. The Marines let out a resounding cheer as the last enemy ship vanished into the sky. In the aftermath of the battle, Ambassador Ivanova addressed the shaken delegates. "The Kroll sought to divide us, to strike fear into our hearts, but they underestimated the strength of human resolve. We will not bow to tyranny, nor will we abandon our allies. Today, we stand united against any who would threaten the peace and freedom of the galaxy." Khazir found himself nodding in agreement. He had witnessed firsthand the indomitable human spirit, the willingness to fight and die for what they believed in. It was a trait that inspired as much as it terrified. As the Indomitable set a course for Earth, Khazir knew that the Galactic conflict would be a turning point. The Kroll had been dealt a severe blow, but they would not take this defeat lightly. War was coming, and humanity would be at the forefront. Looking out at the stars, Khazir couldn't help but feel a sense of awe at the destiny unfolding before them. The humans, once a young and isolated species, were now poised to become a galactic superpower. And the Zorgans, for better or worse, would be a part of that journey. The alliance forged in blood and fire on Galactic's II would shape the future of the galaxy for generations to come. In the aftermath of the Galactic's conflict, the humans and Zorgans found themselves facing a new reality. The Kroll threat had been beaten back, but both species knew it was only a matter of time before the Empire struck again. Determined to seize the initiative, human and Zorgan leaders launched an ambitious joint military project, codenamed Vanguard. The goal was to combine the best of both species' technologies and tactical doctrines into a new class of battlecruiser, one capable of facing the Kroll on equal terms. Khazir, now a respected liaison between the two species, was assigned to oversee the Zorgan contingent of the project. As he arrived at the sprawling shipyards orbiting Earth, he couldn't help but marvel at the scale of the undertaking. Towering skeletal frameworks of half-built ships loomed in the vacuum, swarming with construction drones and EVA-suited engineers. At the heart of the complex floated the pride of the Vanguard fleet, a sleek, deadly-looking vessel bristling with armaments. As Khazir settled into his new role, he quickly realized that integrating human and Zorgan engineering philosophies would be no easy task. The human designs were all brutalist angles and redundant systems, prioritizing raw power and survivability over aesthetics. The Zorgans, in contrast, favored elegant, streamlined ships that relied on superior technology and finesse. Tensions flared as human and Zorgan engineers clashed over design decisions. The humans insisted on heavy armor and oversized weapons, while the Zorgans argued for advanced shielding and directed energy systems. Matters came to a head when a human engineer, a brash young man named Jack Hawkins, openly challenged a Zorgan designer in a project meeting. "Your pretty little ray guns are all well and good in a lab, but out there in the real world, you need good old-fashioned kinetic firepower to get the job done." The Zorgan, a brilliant but haughty scientist named Calathos, bristled at the implication. "Your primitive projectile weapons are laughably inefficient. Our directed energy systems can deliver far more precise and devastating strikes." As the argument escalated, Khazir found himself forced to intervene. He called both Hawkins and Kalthos into his office, determined to find a resolution. "Gentlemen, this bickering is getting us nowhere. We have a common enemy, and we need to find a way to work together if we're going to have any hope of defeating them." Hawkins and Kalthos glared at each other, but grudgingly agreed to hear Khazur out. Over the next several hours, the three of them pored over the design schematics, searching for a compromise. Finally, they hit upon a solution. By integrating Zorgan energy weapons into a human-designed rapid-fire turret system, they could create a fearsome new armament that combined the best of both worlds. Hawkins christened it the Starburst Cannon, much to Kalthos' chagrin. With this breakthrough, the Vanguard project surged forward. Human and Zorgan engineers began to collaborate more closely, finding ways to merge their strengths and compensate for each other's weaknesses. The result was a marvel of advanced technology and raw firepower. The Vanguard battlecruisers were sleek, deadly predators, packed with cutting-edge weapons and defenses. They were the perfect fusion of human tenacity and Zorgan ingenuity. As the first ships of the new fleet took to the stars, Khazur couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Despite all the challenges and setbacks, humans and Zorgans had found a way to work together, to create something greater than either could have achieved alone. But even as the Vanguard fleet prepared for its first missions, dark clouds loomed on the horizon. The Kroll Empire had not been idle, and rumors swirled of a massive new offensive brewing in the depths of their territory. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shake the very foundations of the galaxy, and at the forefront would be the Vanguard battlecruisers, the embodiment of a new era of cooperation and conflict. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: the alliance between humans and Zorgans would be tested as never before, and the outcome would determine the fate of countless worlds. The Kroll Empire's attack came sooner than anyone expected. A massive invasion fleet, larger than any seen before, burst out of hyperspace on the fringes of the Deniv system, a key strategic crossroads and home to several human and Zorgan colonies. The Kroll, it seemed, had not taken their defeat at Galagos lightly. They had marshaled their forces for a decisive strike, seeking to cut off the head of the human-Zorgan alliance in one fell swoop. As alarms blared across the system, the defenders scrambled to respond. The Zorgan fleet, stationed in orbit around Denibai, moved to intercept the invaders, but as they closed to engage, it became clear they were hopelessly outmatched. The Kroll ships were monstrous, bristling with weaponry that dwarfed anything the Zorgans could bring to bear. They tore through the defenders' lines like a hot knife through butter, scattering the Zorgan ships like leaves before a hurricane. On the bridge of his flagship, Khazur could only watch in horror as his comrades were cut down one by one. The Kroll had caught them off guard, and they were paying the price in blood. But even as the situation looked darkest, a new hope emerged. The human Vanguard fleet, led by the intrepid Admiral Nedisha Ivanova, dropped out of warp on the edge of the battle space. The sleek battlecruisers, the fruit of months of frenzied construction and training, wasted no time in engaging the enemy. They hit the Kroll fleet like a thunderbolt, their starburst cannons tearing great gouges in the enemy's battle line. Caught between the humans and the rallying Zorgans, the Kroll suddenly found themselves on the defensive. But they were far from beaten. With a roar of engines, they charged the human fleet, seeking to overwhelm them with sheer numbers. What followed was a battle unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. Vanguard ships danced and weaved through the Kroll formations, using their superior speed and maneuverability to stay one step ahead of the enemy's guns. Zorgan vessels, their shields bolstered by human-designed generators, soaked up incredible punishment as they poured fire into the Kroll ranks. At the heart of the maelstrom was the UES Indomitable, Admiral Ivanova's flagship. The massive battlecruiser plowed through the Kroll lines like an unstoppable juggernaut, its guns never falling silent as it traded broadsides with a dozen enemy dreadnoughts. On the Indomitable's bridge, Ivanova stood resolute, calmly issuing orders even as the ship shuddered under the impact of enemy fire. Beside her, Jack Hawkins, now a senior weapons officer, whooped with glee as he directed the ship's batteries. "That's it, you ugly bastards. Come and get a taste of human ingenuity." Slowly, inexorably, the tide began to turn. The Vanguard's superior technology and the skill of their crews started to tell. Kroll ships exploded in gouts of flame or limped out of the battle trailing debris and leaking atmosphere. In a desperate gamble, the Kroll commander ordered a full frontal assault on the Indomitable, seeking to take out the human flagship and break their spirit. A phalanx of Kroll dreadnoughts bore down on the Indomitable, their weapons charged and ready. But Ivanova was ready for them. With a flurry of commands, she brought the Indomitable about, presenting the ship's heaviest armor to the enemy. At the same time, she ordered the rest of the fleet to concentrate their fire on the approaching Kroll. The result was devastating. Caught in a crossfire from a dozen vanguards, and with the Indomitable's guns pounding them at point-blank range, the Kroll dreadnoughts crumpled like tin cans. One by one they broke apart, spilling debris and bodies into the void. With their flagship gone and their fleet in tatters, the Krolls will finally broke. They fled the battlefield, leaving behind a field of shattered ships and the cheers of victorious humans and Zorgans. The Battle of Deneb was over. Against all odds, the Alliance had triumphed. But as Khazur surveyed the damage to his own fleet, he knew the cost had been high. The war was far from over. The Kroll would be back, and next time they would be even more determined. But for now, in this moment of victory, there was cause for celebration. Humans and Zorgans had fought side by side, their blood mingling on the decks of their ships. They had forged a bond of battle, a kinship born of shared hardship and sacrifice. And in that bond, Khazur saw the seeds of something greater, a future where humans and Zorgans stood together as true allies, guardians of a galaxy at peace. It was a future worth fighting for, no matter the cost. And fight they would, until the stars themselves burned cold. The victory at Deneb had been a turning point, a decisive blow against the Kroll Empire's invasion. But even as the humans and Zorgans celebrated, the enemy was already plotting their next move. Deep within Kroll territory, a war council convened. The Kroll leadership, humiliated by their defeat, seethed with rage and a thirst for vengeance. They knew they could not match the Vanguard fleet in open battle, but there were other ways to strike at their foes. The plan they devised was as audacious as it was horrific. A suicide fleet, packed with the most fanatical Kroll warriors, would make a surprise jump into Zorgan space. Their target? The Zorgan homeworld itself. The Kroll knew they could not hope to conquer the planet, but they could devastate it, inflicting a wound that would cripple the Zorgans for generations. And in doing so, they would shatter the Alliance, leaving the humans to stand alone. When the first reports of the Kroll fleet's movement reached Khazur, he instantly grasped the terrible implications. The Zorgan homeworld was heavily defended, but it had never been built to withstand an assault of this magnitude. If the Kroll broke through, the consequences would be unthinkable. Khazur rushed to alert his human allies, but he found them already embroiled in crisis. A series of coordinated Kroll attacks along the frontier had drawn the bulk of the Vanguard fleet away from Zorgan space. It would take them days to redeploy, days they did not have. In desperation, Khazur turned to the only human commander still within range, Admiral Ivanova, whose battered but still formidable squadron had been undergoing repairs at a nearby starbase. Ivanova listened to Khazur's warning with a grim expression. She knew all too well the stakes involved. If the Zorgan homeworld fell, the Alliance would crumble. The war would be lost. But even with her ships, they stood little chance against the Kroll Armada. They were too few, too damaged from the Battle of Deneb. It would be a suicide mission. As Ivanova wrestled with the decision, a call came through from Jack Hawkins, now captain of his own Vanguard ship. He had been analyzing the Kroll fleet's movements, and he believed he had found a vulnerability. The Kroll ships were moving fast, too fast for their own good. They were burning through fuel at a prodigious rate, and their reactors were running hot. If they could be delayed, even for a short time, they might suffer catastrophic failures. Hawkins proposed a daring plan. A single ship loaded with an experimental new weapon. A warp missile designed to tear holes in the fabric of space-time itself could make a fast, stealthy approach to the Krull fleet. If the missile could be detonated at the right moment, it might disrupt the Krull's formation, buying precious time for the Zorgan defenses to prepare. It was a long shot, a desperate gamble, but it was the only chance they had. Ivanova didn't hesitate. She knew what had to be done. With a heavy heart, she gave Hawkins the go-ahead. His ship, the UES Valiant, would make the run alone. As the Valiant sped towards its destiny, Khazar could only watch and wait, his heart heavy with the knowledge of the sacrifice the humans were making. They were throwing themselves into the fire, risking everything to save a world not their own. It was a bravery beyond anything Khazar had ever known, a selflessness that humbled him to his core. In that moment, he saw the humans not as reckless or violent, but as something else entirely. They were protectors, guardians willing to give their own lives for the sake of others. When the news came through of the Valiant's success, of the Krull fleet's disarray, and the Zorgan's miraculous deliverance, Khazar's tears were not just of relief, but of gratitude. The humans had shown the true depth of their spirit, the infinite reserves of courage and sacrifice that lay beneath their warrior exterior. The Krull gambit had been defeated, but at a terrible cost. Jack Hawkins and his crew were gone, consumed in the fires of their own valor, but their legacy would endure, a shining beacon of the heights to which both humans and Zorgans could rise. In the face of such nobility, such selfless heroism, old prejudices and misunderstandings seemed to fade away. A new understanding had been forged between the two species, a bond that went beyond mere alliance. They had become brothers in arms, united by a common cause and a shared sacrifice. Together, they would face the future, whatever challenges it might bring. And though the war still raged, though darkness still loomed, Khazar knew that a light had been kindled that would never be extinguished. The light of hope, of friendship, of an indomitable spirit that would carry them through to victory. The defeat of the Krull Gambit marked a turning point in the war. The Krull Empire, its strategy shattered and its forces in disarray, fell back to its core systems. The human-Zorgan alliance, bolstered by its hard-fought victories, pressed its advantage, liberating world after world from Krull occupation. Across the galaxy, the tide of opinion began to turn. Species that had once viewed humanity with suspicion, or even fear now saw them in a new light. The tale of the Valiant sacrifice spread like wildfire, a stirring testament to human courage and selflessness. On the Zorgan homeworld, Khazar found himself at the center of a whirlwind of change. As the architect of the Alliance and a hero of the war, he was elevated to the highest echelons of Zorgan leadership. But with this new influence came new challenges. There were those among the Zorgans who still harbored doubts about humanity, who feared that their aggressive tactics and raw power made them a dangerous ally. They pointed to the destruction wrought by human weapons, the staggering loss of life on both sides of the conflict. Khazar knew he had to address these concerns head-on. In a historic speech before the Zorgan High Council, he spoke passionately of his experiences with humanity, of the bravery and self-sacrifice he had witnessed firsthand. Yes, the humans are warriors, he acknowledged. They fight with a ferocity and a tenacity that can be terrifying to behold. But that same indomitable spirit is what makes them such steadfast allies. They do not fight for glory or conquest, but to protect those they hold dear. He spoke of Jack Hawkins and the crew of the Valiant, of their willingness to give their own lives to save a world not their own. He spoke of the bonds of friendship and respect that had grown between humans and Zorgans, forged in the crucible of war. What some call human overkill, Khazar declared, I call an unwavering commitment to defense of the innocent, an absolute refusal to compromise in the face of evil. These are qualities we should aspire to, not fear. His words struck a chord. Slowly but surely, the tide of Zorgan opinion began to shift. The alliance with humanity, once a source of tension and mistrust, became a point of pride, a symbol of the Zorgans' own growth and maturity as a species. As the war drew to a close, the fruits of this new understanding began to blossom. Joint human-Zorgan reconstruction projects sprang up on war-torn worlds, a testament to the power of cooperation and shared purpose. Scientific and cultural exchanges flourished, each species learning from and enriching the other. And at the forefront of it all were the veterans of the war, the human and Zorgan soldiers who had fought and bled side by side. They became the vanguard of a new era, living embodiments of the Alliance and the values it represented. For Khazar, watching this new future unfold was a source of profound satisfaction. He knew that the scars of the war would linger, that there would be new challenges and threats to face. The Kroll, though defeated, still lurked in the shadows, licking their wounds and plotting revenge. But he also knew that humans and Zorgans would face these trials together, united by an unbreakable bond of trust and shared sacrifice. They had proven themselves to each other in the forges of war, had shown the true measure of their character and resolve. Looking out over a galaxy at peace, Khazar felt a sense of immense pride and gratitude. Pride in what his own people had accomplished, in their ability to grow and adapt. And gratitude for humanity, for the fearless warriors and selfless heroes who had become not just allies, but true friends. Together, they would safeguard this hard-won peace. Together, they would build a future brighter than any they had dared to imagine. A future where the light of understanding and unity would blaze across the stars, a beacon of hope for generations to come. It was a future worth fighting for. And fight for it they would, humans and Zorgans side by side, until the end of days.